I know. Everybody's wondering if this is going to be my favorite episode. Well, you're just going to have to stick around to the end to find out. Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to see you all once again. And if you're new here, I'm so glad to see you as well, because you may enjoy what we're doing on this channel, where we go back and look at cartoons and movies and comics that we grew up on in the 80s and 90s and look at them from the perspective of being an adult. Now we're into the 2000s here with Batman Beyond, but don't let that concern you, because today we're talking about the episode Out of the Past, which originally aired on October 21st, 2000.
Batman, Batman, Batman.
Well, this episode is one that I hear a lot of people talking about and is a favorite episode of many people. And I'm going to give you my review, and I'm going to look at it very honestly and through the perspective of being an adult, but also weighing in some of the nostalgic factors of this episode. But we'll get into all that right after our 60-second rundown. And today we have a very special guest with that rundown. Take it away, my friend.
Here we go. So it's Bruce Wayne's birthday. Terry takes him to a Batman musical for his birthday. Terry thinks it's Shway, Bruce thinks it's Swarbage, and leaves in the middle of it. Bruce is back in the Batcave reminiscing on past girlfriends. Talia walks in, offers him the Lazarus Pit as a birthday gift. He refuses. Later, he's driving in his car. He gets a flat tire. Some jokers are hassling him. Somehow a girl gets thrown out in the street. He goes out to save her, but he's too slow to get out of harm's way. Terry flies in as Batman, saves them both. So then Bruce goes back to Talia and wants to do the Lazarus Pit. She takes him to his place. Terry's worried that he's going to become Robin. They go to Talia's place, give him the Lazarus Pit treatment, and he's weightlifting. He's strong again. He's like his old self, but he knows it's not natural, so he decides to leave. Talia's men try to stop him. Terry and Bruce fight, and the old Batman theme music plays, and it's great, and it's classic. And he hears Ra's al Ghul's voice in the hallway. Runs to the door, breaks in, asks Talia, "Where's Ra's? I heard him." Turns around. Talia turns around, and she's got Ra's al Ghul. There's my timer. Okay. You're right, Andy. This is not as easy as it looks.
So close. So close. It was so close, in fact, I'm going to give another person a chance. Here we go. Take it away.
It's like Bruce's birthday, and Terry and him go to this Broadway musical, even though Kevin Conroy voices one of the characters, to then seeing Talia Al Ghul. Bruce is checking out all the girlfriends, or some of the women he used to like or date, or seen some, have a crush. She wants to help him be young again. He does. It is that Lazarus Pit, and Terry knows that something was up, and it's obviously Ra's al Ghul is not dead somehow, to obviously show the shocking truth of the group wants Bruce's body, because Ra's al Ghul is alive, but in his own daughter's body, he kissed him! Ew! And everything was just going to go crazy. They fight it out. The new Batman, the old Batman, as much as he can stay young, and they stop the whole, the leak thing and the whole messed up crew. And this time, Ra's al Ghul in Talia's body got defeated. They escaped and all that such, and it's pretty crazy.
Not an easy episode. Again, if you want to submit your own 60-second rundown for any of the episodes that we have left to review here for Batman Beyond Season 3, you can check out the video up here and gives you all the details of how to do that. And also, if it is a two-parter, you have 90 seconds. So just to keep it all fair. But you can still submit. There's still time for the potential of getting your 60-second rundown featured on my channel. So check it out.
You missed a great show.
All right, so this episode has a great opening to it, although it's a little cheesy, where we have Bruce and Terry at this Batman musical for his birthday. But there's a lot of neat elements to this, and one is that it's actually Kevin Conroy singing.
There is a song the good folks sing.
What's fun about that is he is a theater actor. That's where he came from initially, was theater, and he did a lot of Shakespeare, but he did do musicals and also was a singer. And so the moments that they get to feature him that way in these shows are always kind of fun.
I am Gotham's darkest night.
The other thing that's kind of fun is that there was a Batman musical in the works that was supposed to be directed by Tim Burton, and I don't believe Tim Burton has directed any other theater. And I think maybe it was slated to come out in 2004, but that was talked about. There is a Superman musical.
Why does the strongest man in the world have the heaviest heart in the world?
Obviously, Spider-Man got a lot of press when they did a musical, so superheroes and musicals, as ridiculous as it seems in this episode, is not out of the ordinary. I mean, we've seen things like that.
A superstitious, cowardly lot.
And who knows, if you're watching this years in the future, as popular superheroes have been right here at the beginning of the 21st century, I could only guess that they're figuring out ways to further that popularity with into other mediums. And I as a big theater fan, and especially a big musical theater fan, would love to see that. I would enjoy that.
A superstitious, cowardly lot.
And I do like the moments where we take for Batman Beyond, as a fan of the original Batman series and a fan of Bruce Wayne's Batman, it is nice when we take some moments to have Bruce Wayne get a featured episode. And it's nice to see what has transpired with him since we last saw him in Batman the Animated Series.
Time has not tempered your sarcasm, beloved.
This sets up a really kind of neat story of, it's on Bruce Wayne's birthday. He's feeling a little older, feeling a little nostalgic. Now as an adult, I can relate to that even more of feeling like, yeah, I get it. You know, I can relate to a little bit of where he's coming from and not feeling in his prime as he used to.
Even a few years ago, I could have gotten us both to safety.
And particularly the scene with the car that finally puts him over the edge of going, gosh, I could have taken those villains in my prime, and waiting on this teenager, this kid to save me, and feeling a little worthless. And so it ties well into this story and brings in Ra's al Ghul. One, I have to say, I really liked that they acknowledged in this episode that even within their own shows, he's been pronounced very differently.
Though father's name was pronounced Raish, not Raz.
And I think I'm one that often says Ra's al Ghul, based on the original animated series. And I've been corrected a number of times on this channel as well. But now we have a definitive answer that Talia Al Ghul, well, actually it was Raish at that time, right from the horse's mouth, if you will, that is pronounced Ra's al Ghul. So I guess I just got to get used to that and adapt that as the pronunciation. How to pronounce it.
No one has earned a second chance more than you.
This episode is a nice break from some of the formula of the episodes that we've seen, especially in this season, where we see Batman face up against a villain and can't stop him, so he's got to regroup and come back and now be able to stop him. We kind of fell into that rut, which works for the show, but this is a nice break, and it's a nice break to dig into some of the psyche of Bruce Wayne and what he's dealing with, and there's kind of a neat duality going on where, yeah, Bruce kind of still wishes he was out there being Batman.
There are times I can see he wishes it was still him in the suit instead of me.
You know, everybody assuming that Terry feels the same way, going, well, no, I'm the new Batman, I want to take over, and him kind of wanting to see Bruce in his prime.
I'll tell you right now, there's no way I'm wearing the Robin suit.
Terry is a little bit of a reluctant hero. He's a little bit kind of forced into this and is trying to do the right thing and wants to help out, but also has all these other things that he's trying to balance. So I think he would be first in line to hang up the cowl, as if you will, to let somebody else take over that.
You're worried that when Bruce becomes young, he'll want to be Batman again.
I have to say, as a fan of Batman, a fan of Bruce Wayne, it was a little shocking to see Bruce Wayne going into the Lazarus pit, something that I did not think that we would ever witness.
Let's get it over with.
I do have to mention too, this is a great example, another great example of how great of a voice actor Kevin Conroy is. And I think that a lot of people really love him as Batman and think of him as the definitive Batman. I know I do as well. But there's little nuances that he does that I have to point out when I see them that I don't think it's talked about enough.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be ungrateful.
Just in this episode, we see him playing the musical theater version of Batman, and that's a voice and is a totally different character. That's not Bruce Wayne or anything. That's just somebody playing Bruce Wayne in a show. And that's Kevin Conroy speaking for another actor playing a version of Batman in theater, which is a different voice than what he does for Bruce Wayne now, and a different voice for what he did for Bruce Wayne then back in the original animated series.
Batman,
And then obviously we have old Bruce Wayne that we've heard throughout the show, which is different than the Bruce Wayne that we've heard in the animated series, and even different than we heard when Kevin Conroy spoke for Thomas Wayne. Just different inflections, different level to his voice, different age to his voice.
Don't remind me.
And then we also have another version of Bruce Wayne in this where he is younger, not as young as he was in the animated series, not as old as he is in Batman Beyond, but kind of in between. And it's a different voice. It's not like he's got old Bruce Wayne voice and young Bruce Wayne voice. Here's this interesting in-between voice, which again is just a testament to how great of an actor and how versatile an actor is to be able to accomplish that.
Not quite at my peak.
We see that from, like Oscar-level actors who can play, variations of their character, or older and younger and still, all those kind of things, are the versatility of playing, a character this way and then a completely different character. And here we are watching Kevin Conroy do that with just his voice, with just his speech pattern, and with just the graveliness of his voice, without for lack of a better technical term. And it's exquisite. It's really a phenomenal trait, which to me is the reasons why Kevin Conroy is the definitive voice of Batman.
It's unnatural. A cheat.
This episode even gets even better when we have Bruce, in his prime, and Terry impressed, and he's feeling good, but he just knows it's just not real. It's what he wanted, but understanding that's the past. I'm done with that. And something just doesn't quite add up. And him and Terry trying to get out of this place.
We're leaving.
I do have to say, I really did enjoy the electric guitar version of the Batman theme, where we have the sound of Batman Beyond is very rock and roll and electric guitar, and then we bring that in with the original Batman theme. I mean, it's a great moment, and seeing Terry and Bruce fighting side by side is kind of a great highlight for this episode. And what a great surprise and great reveal when we see Talia is actually Ra's al Ghul in her body, which it was just very surprising, very shocking. Did not see that coming.
But I suppose what is done is done.
Detective.
And having Ra's kind of sprinkled throughout the series from the beginning, the original animated series, on into this version of the show is neat, and kind of wrapping up his story is all very interesting. And what a great plot, kind of the different ends of the spectrum, Ra's al Ghul and Batman, or Bruce Wayne, and they have kind of a love-hate kind of relationship, and kind of battling each other. And Bruce was in love with his daughter, and they ultimately have a kid together. The evolution of Ra's al Ghul has now led him to want to take over Bruce Wayne's body, which is it's a great kind of all-encompassing story into that.
I don't cheat death, I master it.
And I think what made this episode all work was it was a long time coming to give a moment for Bruce Wayne to really let go of the past. And we saw this hinted at in the beginning, in the first few episodes, of Bruce trying to train Terry, and Bruce having a certain way of doing things, and Terry doing things very differently. And we kind of deal with that throughout. But I thought this was a great way of Bruce going down a path of going, well, what if I could get my strength back, my youth back? Could I take over and be Batman again? And he kind of dips his toe into that pool, if you will, the Lazarus pool, and ultimately decides, no, that's not the right choice, and really brings some closure and is letting go of the past.
I guess for a moment I was as weak as you, Ra's.
I like that. I think that really is a great moment, a great element to this episode, and a great highlight of the series, to really spend 3 seasons watching Bruce Wayne really let go of the Batman mantle.
Whatever was in there died years ago.
Which I know has been a theme throughout Batman's history, of him really kind of delving into this idea of the burden that he carries with being Batman, but having to do that and having this sense of conviction that he needs to continue this fight against crime, and finally coming to the point now, in his older age with a new Batman on the scene and going, yeah, this is the right thing. I need to let go and really let somebody else carry this burden for a while. I think this is an important episode and certainly carries a lot of weight in that regard.
I'm not crying.
Hearing him talk about Talia and still having a love for Talia, and now knowing she's gone and out of his life, and letting go of that. Obviously in this storyline, and I don't even know at this point in the comics if they had established that Talia and Bruce Wayne had a kid together with Damian. That might have been more recent, but certainly that plays into this as well, of him truly being in love with her and still having feelings for her all these many years later.
She was a very special woman.
So when it comes time to rank this episode, I know everybody's eagerly waiting to know if I am going to rank this episode as the number one favorite episodes of the show. And I got to tell you, it was a very difficult decision. And I really tried to look at these episodes fairly and rate them against each other and look at it as a whole and trying to cultivate this list as best I can. So for those reasons, this episode falls at the number 2 spot of my favorite episodes so far, and I'll tell you why. It falls just below Disappearing Ink, and the reason for that is when I look at this series, it is a different series than Batman the Animated Series, and it is about a different character. It's about Terry McGinnis, and Batman Beyond has its own identity and should have its own identity, even though I'm a huge fan of Bruce Wayne and the original animated series. And so if you look back at my review of this episode, everything that I'm saying and all of the highlights that I'm saying about this episode have to do with Bruce Wayne, have to do with this being his story and bringing closure to ideas and characters and storylines from the original animated series. And I don't feel like that is, although that's good and I like it and certainly earned it into the number 2 spot, it didn't feel right to put this episode as the number 1 episode, because Disappearing Ink for me is a quintessential, that is how a Batman Beyond episode should be. It's about Terry McGinnis. It's about an original villain, not a carryover from the animated series, but a villain for Batman Beyond, and Ink being that villain versus Terry's Batman that's really integrated into his character. You can't have one without the other, just like Joker and Batman sort of thing, or Ra's al Ghul and Batman. And so to me, that deserves to be in the number 1 spot. So far, we've still got a few episodes left, but that deserves to be in the number 1 spot as far as the best episode of Batman Beyond just as a whole, versus this episode, which is good and still in the number 2, but is more in that position because of the carryover that it brings from Batman Beyond. That's my opinion. But I do have this beating out Centuries of the Last Cosmos, which again, as much as I enjoy that episode and love that episode as a sci-fi adventure, interesting topics of being inside of a video game world and things like that, this episode it did have the advantage of having more of a backstory, more of a story integrated into it. So that's where it falls in my list of favorite episodes so far.
It's Shui.
It's Schwarbage.
Let me know, do you agree with me that this episode should be at the number 2 spot, or is this episode number 1 for you? You don't have to agree with me, but certainly let me know in the comment sections if you agree or disagree with my ranking. If you enjoyed this episode, again, whether you agree with me or not, hit that like button and share it with a friend. I always appreciate that. And if you want to see more episodes like this, just hit subscribe. You can click the bell notification so you're notified when they come out. And next up, we're going to be talking about the episode Speak No Evil, so you don't want to miss that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode. I'll see you soon.